Hola chicos, ok, vamos a repasar las diferencias entre el pretérito y el imperfecto en cuanto a cómo se usan. Let's talk about the differences in their use and how to differentiate between the two. First, before we do, we're going to do a quick review of the preterite conjugation endings for AR verbs. We know they are aste, o, con acento, amos, asteis, aron. For ER and IR verbs, they are iste, io, acento sobre la O, imos, istes, ieron. Go ahead and write these in on your sheet, and if you need to pause the video in order to do so, go right ahead and do that. Next, we're going to talk about the uses for the preterite. So the main use for the preterite is for isolated or completed actions that began and ended at a specific time, or they were carried out a specific number of times, all in the past, right? So we know we're talking about the past, but we definitely know there was a beginning and an ending, or we know how many times it occurred. Like I said, definite beginning and definite ending time. And one trick I like to use is you can ask yourself this question. Can you write it on your calendar? We'll see later on when we start to talk about the imperfect that there are things on there that you probably wouldn't write on your calendar. It was a nice day. Not necessarily. I was 12. Not really. I fell off my bike. You could write that on my calendar. I won the game, or we won the game. You can write that on your calendar. So we'll talk about that little trick in the future. So let's talk about some trigger words that will clue us into the preterite. Specific times, like anoche, that we know means last night, or ayer, yesterday, anteayer, the day before yesterday, el verano pasado, last summer. Now you can exchange el verano for la semana, so you can say la semana pasada, or el mes pasado, el año pasado, lo que sea. Una vez, one time or once, and you can change that, of course, to dos veces, two times, when you know the specific times, right? So this number could vary. And then we have por dos horas, when we know how long it lasted, when we know the beginning and we know the ending time. So por dos horas, for 2 hours, and again, those 2 hours can be exchanged with other amounts of time. You could say por una semana, por un mes, por un año, por 4 horas. Here's an example of one of the sentences in the preterite. So it says, anoche perdimos el partido contra nuestro rival por un gol. So anoche, there's your trigger, right? Last night. So that means we know when it happened. Perdimos, we lost the game against our rival by 1 goal. So we lost the game against our rival. It is a isolated event. Right, the game, we know it happened last night, so we know the time. And could it be something that you write on your calendar? Sure, yes, you definitely could. Okay, so let's go over now the imperfect, reviewing the conjugations. We know for AR verbs, aba, abas, aba, abamos, abais, aban. And then we go to the ER, IR verbs, which are ia, ias, ia, iamos, iais, ian, all with accent marks over those guys. So up in the AR, only accent is over the nosotros. Okay. So let's look at our uses for the imperfect. First, you have heard us say this already in class, heard me say this in class. These are for habitual actions that were repeated an undetermined number of times in the past. You don't know how long it happened. It's those used to phrases, was, or I always would do this. They're ongoing progressive actions in the past. I was, whatever, ing. I was singing in the choir. They were practicing basketball in the gymnasium. Feelings, emotions, and beliefs. Okay, I was feeling sad, imperfect. Even if you know when it happened. Yesterday I was feeling sad. The feelings overrides the exact time it happened. So if it's an emotion or belief or a feeling, even though you know when it happened, it might have a specific time it started and ended, it overrides that and it will be in the imperfect. Okay? She was happy after they won the game. That would still be imperfect. And then background information like time, weather, age, and physical appearance. It was a beautiful day. I was 12 years old when I got my first bike. So I was 12 years old. That would be in the imperfect. I received my first bike. That would be a preterit. That is a one-time event. Physical appearance. He was tall. He was handsome. He was, unshaven. Whatever. It would be imperfect. Okay. So here's some trigger words that will tell you it's imperfect. I'll give you a little clue here. So we've got siempre. Right? We know this. We've seen this in some of our practices with the imperfect. I always rode my bike to school. A menudo, often. She often left the parties early to go home. Cada semana, each week. Even though we know that it happened every week, we don't know for how long. We don't know the beginning and we don't know the ending. So this would be an imperfect. And again, semana could be changed for cada día, every day, cada año, every year. Okay? De vez en cuando, once in a while. And then we have mientras, while. For example, while I was cooking in the kitchen, there's your I was, ing. Mientras is usually a lead-in to tell you that there's going to be an imperfect sentence coming right behind it. And then we have an example here. Cuando era joven, siempre jugaba con mi amiga Krista. Okay? When I was young, we don't know when exactly, but it was time in the past, I always played with my friend Krista. So we don't know when exactly I was playing, but it was a habitual action that happened in the past. Okay, so let's look at some of these practices. Imperfecto or pretérito y por qué. Cuando eran jóvenes, ganaron el campeonato y recibieron un trofeo recontra grande. So I went ahead and put these in Spanish so you don't have to worry about the translations. In fact, even when you look at the verbs, you can already tell whether it is in the imperfect or preterite, but I thought it would be good practice to introduce this as to why, as to naming. So, cuando eran jóvenes, when they were young, ganaron el campeonato, they won the championship, and received un trofeo recontra grande, a super big trophy, a huge trophy or a super big trophy, right? So eran, is it conjugated in the imperfect or the preterite? So go ahead and see if you can answer yours on your sheet, and then I'll give you the answer. Eran is in the imperfect. And why did we choose the imperfect? Cuando eran jóvenes. Well, that was because it's a background, it's an age, it's also an unspecified ending and beginning. Okay, so any of those answers would have been fine if you had put those down. So ganaron, let's see. Okay, go ahead and put down your answers. Imperfect or preterite. Y después dime por qué. So ganaron is in the preterite, we know. Why? Why did we choose the preterite for they won the championship? That would would be because it's an isolated event. It's an event that we know happened and ended at a specific time. And the same goes with recibieron. Okay, it is in the preterite. Why? Same thing. It is an isolated event. It started, it's over, boom, it's done. Okay, put it in your calendar. Put it on your calendar. Look at this sentence now. We look at cuando eran jóvenes. When they were young, could you put that on your calendar? When they were young? Not really. They won the championship? You could write it on the date it happened. They received a super big trophy? You could write it on the date that it happened. Yes, you could put that on the calendar. Okay? So here's your next sentence. Mientras ella escuchaba la radio, oyó su canción favorita. So let's see. Mientras ella. So there's your mientras. We know that's a trigger word for one of the imperfect, I should say. So while she was listening to the radio, she oyó. she heard her favorite song. So escuchaba, we know, is in the imperfect. And why? What is the reason for the imperfect? While she was listening to the radio. Okay, it is your ongoing action. That's your ing, was an ing. Oyó, she heard her favorite song. That's in the preterit. That's your I to Y, right? Oír. And why is it in the preterit? It's an isolated event. She heard her favorite song. It's over. It's done with. It started. It ended. It's done with. In fact, if you wanted to, you could put it on the calendar. Okay, verbs that change the meaning in the preterite and imperfect. We have already talked about most of these. There's a couple different ones that I've added. I think one actually is all. But we're going to take a quick look at them. So, querer, we know querer is tried in the preterite tense, right? Quise, yo quise, I tried. Querer in the imperfect, yo quería, I wanted. Okay? Next one, no querer is refused, right? So no quise, I refused. If I said no quise ir, I refused to go. No quería, I didn't want. No quería ir, I didn't want to go. We don't know whether they went or not. They just didn't want to. Conocer, in the preterite tense, it would mean to met, I should say. Like, yo conocí a mi amiga cuando tenía 4 años. Yo conocí, I met. Conocía, I knew. So you could say like, nos conocíamos, we knew each other. Okay, nos conocimos, changing it back to preterite, would be we met each other. Saber, in the preterite, found out. Yo supe, I found out. Yo supe lo que hiciste el verano pasado. I found out what you did last summer. Or saber, sabía, in the imperfect, I knew. Poder, succeeded, and I succeeded, yo pude. Or imperfect, yo podía, I was able. And finally, tener, in the preterite would be received, yo tuve. In the imperfect, yo tenía, I used to have. So tuve, I received, a feeling of received, and tener would be tenía, I used to have. Okay, chicos, so this is the end of the PowerPoint, and what I'd like you to do now is to go ahead and, okay, chicos, so it looks like that is the end of our PowerPoint. What I'd like you to do now is, why don't you go through your notes, look them over, and then you have some exercises there that you can complete when you are finished looking over your notes. And you want to finish those up for class tomorrow. Make sure that when you're answering your questions at the bottom of the back page that you are writing the reason for choosing the imperfect or the preterite, and that you are underlining or circling your trigger words, okay? Thanks so much and have a great day.